Hi everyone, welcome. I hope you are doing good. In this video, we are going to talk about a tool called Vagrant, and we will see how we can use this software to create development environment with VMware Fusion. So generally, if you are trying to create virtual environment for your development need, for example, you could directly use these virtualization tool, for example, VMware, Docker Desktop or VirtualBox. But the problem with that approach is that once you set up these virtual environment on one machine, they are not portable. So you cannot move those virtual environments to other machine, and if you want to set up the same virtual environment on some other machine, you have to start from the scratch. So this is where a tool like Vagrant would come handy. So Vagrant, as you can see in this diagram, relies on a main configuration file which is called Vagrantfile. So you write all of your configurations in this file, Vagrant will read it, then it will interact with the virtualization software, in our case which is VMware Fusion. It could be anything, for example, AWS, Docker, VirtualBox, etc. So Vagrant will interact with that provider and set up your virtual machines based on the configurations that you have provided in Vagrantfile. And you could simply copy over these Vagrantfile or configuration files to some other machine and create a similar virtual environment on different machines. So this is where a software like Vagrant would be useful. So in today's demo, we are going to look into setting up a virtual environment using VMware Fusion. That means I'm running it on Mac OS. If you are going to run it on Windows, you can use a software called VMware Workstation. These two are now open source for personal use, which is a great news for us. So what we are going to learn today is how to install all the prerequisites on our machine to use Vagrant. Then we will see how to create a Vagrant project, creates a sample Vagrant file. We will see how to start a virtual machine using Vagrant. We will see how to provision an environment and access shared folders. Okay, so let's get started. The very first thing we need to do is install VMware Fusion. So let's go to VMware Fusion site, which is already opened on my machine. If I click on download Fusion or Workstation, which is from VMware, which is now owned by Broadcom, by the way, it will redirect me to a site called support.broadcom.com. Since I am already logged in, I don't have to re-log in. Here in the product, I can just search for Fusion. And you can see VMware Fusion is there an option. So I will just click on VMware Fusion. Now you can see that we have three options, 11, 12 and 13. We will install the latest one, which is 13.6.2. Let's click on this. Now in this page, I have to click on terms and conditions, and now you can see that we have a file for Intel based and Apple Silicon Macs. I have Apple Silicon on my Mac, so this should work for me as well. So I will click yes here. It asked for the trade compliance verifications, which I have already done. And now I can finally download it. So now it has started to download the VMware Fusion 13.6.2 for my machine. Let's wait for it to complete. Okay, so now this download is complete. Let me double click on it. So let's install VMware Fusion on my machine. I will click on this icon. So let's open it. Okay, so it's asking for my username and password, which I have provided. Click the OK button. So now it's installing VMware Fusion on my machine. So I have to agree the terms and condition, which I'll do. Okay, so I will give configuration permissions for VMware to use. So I will just click on accessibility under privacy and security. So that's what I've done. I have allowed VMware Fusion to access my computer's keyboard and mouse, etc. So now it's giving me the installation method. For my case, I don't want to do it because I want to create virtual machines using configuration which would be managed by Vagrant. Let's go back to VS Code. The second thing is we want to install Vagrant, which in my case is already installed on my machine. The third thing we need to install is Vagrant VMware utility. Let's do that. So I've clicked on this link and that has redirected me to this location. We have a couple of ways we can install Vagrant VMware utility. First is using Brew package manager, which we don't want to use. And I'm going to use binary installation on ARM64. How do you find if your MacBook is ARM64 or AMD64? You can just type uname-a or probably better uname-m. As you can see, my MacBook is ARM64. So I'm going to use ARM64 to download this option, and it is now downloaded. So if I double click on this DMG file, I will double click on PKG file. So it says this will install the Vagrant VMware utility, and after this we'll have to install VMware desktop plugin. Okay, so it is installed. I will just click the close item. I will move the installer to bin, which we don't need. Let's first verify the installations. Let's head back to my machine. So if you see, I already have Vagrant 2.4.3 installed. Let's confirm if VMware run is, oh, so it's not found. I'll have to exit and open the item again. Right, so if you see right now, VMware-v is now recognizable. It is giving me different option. This basically means that vmrun is available as a utility. Okay, and now I'm going to install the VMware plugin. So now it is installing the Vagrant VMware desktop plugin. Okay, so it has installed the Vagrant VMware desktop plugin for me. So that installation and prerequisite are now complete. Let's move to creating a Vagrant project. So I'm already in this directory. Let's see if I already have some files there. So I don't have it. So let me create Vagrant VMware lab. So the first step would be to create VMware config, a sample Vagrant file that you can do by just simply running vagrant init command. So once you run the vagrant init command, it will create a vagrant file that it would have the default options. And now we can edit this file. So if I go back to my VS Code, it has created, if you see vagrant, sorry, not this one, vagrant VMware folder. And now it has created a file for me. It is called Vagrantfile. It has a lot of things which are commented out. So as you can see here, we can specify the provider. In our case, it is VMware, but it could be VirtualBox, it could be Docker Desktop, etc. And if we want, we can also provide scripts or shell scripts that we want Vagrant to run. Okay, so for our example, what we have done is I already have a sample Vagrant file that we can use. So what I'm going to do is edit or remove all the content from this file and paste the file that I have in my example, and let's read about this file a little bit. So this is the VM configuration files. The first line and the last line is basically the start and end in terms of the configurations. And then we are also specifying a couple of things. One is the thing called config.vm.box, which basically is the image that Vagrant would be downloading from Vagrant Cloud in order for us to start or create the machine. Now, how do you choose which box or which image that we want to use, right? So for that, what we will do is we will go to a site called Vagrant Cloud. And if you see here, let me remove all these options for now. So by default, this is the site or cloud portal for Vagrant where we can discover Vagrant boxes. And if you see in this page, the first column is the box name, which would be the name that you would use in your Vagrant file to download this particular image. Then we have the version, number of download, latest release, providers. So like I had mentioned, Vagrant will interact with different providers and the image should be provider specific, right? So you cannot have a Docker image running on VMware. Obviously that's not possible. That's why you have to download or use the image which is as per the provider or virtualization tool that you are using, and then architecture. So in our case, the provider is VMware desktop. So let's try this, and let's see, the architecture is ARM64. Okay, so let's see if this image would work for us. Otherwise we'll have to change it. So we will use Bento Ubuntu 22.04. So that's the box that we want Vagrant to download. The network configuration, we want to have the IP for our VirtualBox dynamically provisioned. So that's why we have the type DHCP, but we can also have a static IP if we want. Within the configuration, we want VMware to have memory of 1024 MB and 2 virtual CPUs. So this is pretty much the configurations that we have in our Vagrant file. And this would help Vagrant to spin up that virtual machine for us in VMware Fusion. Okay, so the configuration file is ready now. And let's run vagrant up command, which would be the command to start up the virtual machine. Okay, so let's clear this screen. If I show you the content of this folder, it's vagrant file. And we can now run vagrant up provider. We don't have to specify because we already have it here in our vagrant file, but it's okay. We can specify this as well. And now if you can see here, it is trying to download this image or box from this location. So that's why you have to look into Vagrant Cloud to ensure that the box that you are trying to install is available for your provider. Now it is going to download that image, so it will take some time. And if you are interested, all the files that Vagrant is going to download will be available under your home directory, a hidden folder called vagrant.d. If I do ls here, you can see there are lots of folders available here. And if I go to boxes, as you can see, we already have a lot of other boxes installed previously, but all of your box images will go here. So if you have file storage capacity issues, you can clean up these old unused boxes if you want. Okay, so it is downloading the image for me. It will probably take few minutes. And now if you see here, it has also successfully added the box to VMware desktop, and it has started the machine for me. So let's run a command to check the status of my machine. For that, you can just run vagrant status. So if you see right now, current machine status, the default machine is running on VMware desktop. And let's try to log into this machine. So Vagrant SSH will automatically log you into the machine. And now if you can see, I'm logged into Ubuntu 22.04 GNU Linux, and the system is built by Benito project because that was the VM box we downloaded. So now if I do, for example, host name, as you can already see, right, it's Vagrant. So as you can see, I have 30 GB size available for my machine. If I clear this, okay, so one thing I wanted to show you is if I go to cd vagrant folder, you see this is the same folder which we have here under my working directory, Vagrant VMware Lab, right? And if, for example, I try to add a new file here called test, and I have to do ls-ltr here, you can see test is created here. And if I remove this file test from here, you see it gets deleted from my VS Code as well. I don't need this backup, so let me remove this so that it's clear for you to understand, or probably let me go here. So if I, for example, touch a file A, and if I do ls-ltr here, you can see file A is available here. So that way I can now, if I want, share my files between my machine and a virtual machine if I want. Okay, so the next thing I want to explain or wanted to talk about is how do you automate the installation of software. For example, if I see right now, if let's say I want to use this machine for Ansible purpose, right? So if I do which Ansible, there is no Ansible installed on this machine, right? So let's create a script that we want Vagrant to run on the remote machine, right? So what we can do is in this folder, we can create file called provision.sh, and we'll just copy this. This is very basic command. We are running update, then we are installing software property common, and then we are installing or adding the repository for Ansible, and we want to install the Ansible, right? So we could have done it directly, but we want to keep it in such a way that we can migrate or port these configurations later on to some other machine, and it should work as is, right? So now what we will do is we will go to update our Vagrant file, and we will add this line here, config.vm provision shell path provision.sh. So what we are basically saying is run this script using shell. Now let me go back to my terminal. If I do ls-ltr, you can see the provision.sh script is available here. And now I'm going to run vagrant provision command, and let's see what it does. So essentially this way I'm installing a software in my virtual machine without downloading it onto my machine. But I'm able to manage it using Vagrant rather than me going into the virtual machine and running those scripts. So now the good thing is this configuration file is portable, so I can give it to someone else and say, hey, just run a Vagrant up command from this directory, and it should work for you as it is working for me. Okay, so this script is now complete. Let's go back to my machine and run which Ansible, which I've already done. So as you can see, Ansible is now installed. And if I do like this, see Ansible core 2.17 got installed. And I don't know, let's just run some module for Ansible. Right, so we don't have any inventory, so let's just create host.ini file and just add localhost. So right now if you see, the localhost is unreachable because I don't have SSH server running on this machine. But if I run the SSH server on my machine, then it should be running. So let's do that and let's see the status. Yeah, so it's working. So let's rerun that command again. -u, we want to use vagrant. Ask for password. And now you can see that it's running, right? So I was able to get facts about my local machine. And these are the facts available. I don't want to, let's just not run fact, we'll run ping. Right, you can see that I was able to do ping from Ansible using my same machine to this machine, right? And if I, for example, want to get the IP address. So in this case, as you can see, the localhost and vagrant both are pointing to the same machine. Let's run vmrun list command. So this is showing us the list of VMs that's running right now. And there is a command called get guest IP address. As you can see, the IP address for my virtual machine is 172.16.164.128. And if I just try to ping this, as I can see, I can ping it as well, right? So if I do ns lookup, I don't think it will work because there is no DNS entry for this IP. But as you can see, I could ping it from my machine, right? So if I now want to SSH to that machine, so I can use vagrant user as well. So this is another way of logging into the machine. So as you can see, there are two ways. One is obviously you run vagrant SSH command. The second way is you find out the IP of your remote machine and you can simply use SSH vagrant IP address. The reason why it worked is because you remember earlier we had to restart the SSH server on our machine. Since our machine is now running SSH server, we could connect it from our main machine, which had SSH client already set up there. Okay, so we have already covered how to start the virtual machine, how to access the share folder. I think I've already discussed this. So these are certain commands. You can also look in Google for these commands. I think Vagrant also has a very good documentation available. Let me remove this. So the other thing I wanted to show you, and before we go back and finish this, is that there is a hidden folder that gets created under the repository where we are working. So for example, in this repository, we had few files, and let me show them here so that you don't get confused. So if I go to Vagrant folder, which is shared, so I can look it from the VM directly, you see there is a folder called Vagrant that got installed. And if we cd into it, you can see there are a lot of subfolders called bundler, machines, and RG loader. These are all configuration files that get created when you are creating and initializing the virtual machines using Vagrant. And Vagrant will use all of these to basically pin up and manage the machines on virtualization software like VMware. Okay, so that was a tutorial on how to use Vagrant with VMware Fusion on Mac with M2 chipset. So that's why we had to use VMware Fusion, but you can also use VMware Workstation, etc. as well. I hope you liked this video. I will see you soon. Bye for now. Take care.